Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Welcome, my new viewers. I hope you I hope you subscribe. You have tuned into the series of Jerk Off of the Week. That's right. And this week's Jerk Off is Alvin Bragg, the New York District Attorney in Manhattan. Right. Last week, it was Mayor Eric Adams. Now we're going with Alvin Bragg. He's getting the title for Jerk Off of the Week, right? This man, we'll get right into it, right? This man was born October 21st, 1973, the first black man to hold the position of district attorney in New York, New York. He was previously the chief deputy attorney general of New York and the assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District. And those were some of his credentials before he became the district attorney. He's from Harlem, New York, but he's not from Harlem. He's from the fancy part of Harlem. You know, his mother was a doctor. His father was a civil advocate. And so those are a little bit about where he came from, the type of family that he came from. Fancy Harlem with a mom who was a doctor. He said that when he was a youth in Harlem, or not even a youth, as he was growing up, that he was deeply affected by the fact that the NYPD had to pull a gun on him in 3 different circumstances. I don't know what those circumstances were. He didn't discuss them, what the circumstances were that caused the NYPD to pull a gun on him. But the fact that he would make the statement as an adult that he was deeply affected by this tells us something. And what it tells us is that even as an adult, he held the animosity for the police department of New York. He held a resentment for the police department of New York. He felt that they were unjust towards him, which would obviously affect a lot of his decision making later on in life. Right? He graduated from Trinity School, a fancy private school. This was his K through 12 school at $57,000 a year, very expensive private school. And then he would later go on to Harvard Law School. Anyone that goes to Harvard is a disgrace. Almost anyone used to go to Harvard, and it was seen as something to boast about. But I don't know what's to boast about a school that teaches a completely liberal agenda, you know, which adds to more of Alvin Bragg's thinking pattern, the school that he came from, the type of family that he came from, the grade school that he attended, the private school, the animosity towards the police department, which he clearly stated he was disturbed by them as a youth. I go back, I remember him representing Eric Garner. If you don't remember who Eric Garner is, Eric Garner was the black man that was died in the hands of the police. He was selling loose cigarettes outside of a bodega in Manhattan, and the officers put him in a chokehold. Alvin Bragg tried to bring down the police involved in that incident. And I'm not justifying what they did to Eric Garner, that they were responsible for his death. But the fact is, not my opinion, that Eric Garner resisted arrest. And when you resist arrest, it forces the police to become physical. You cannot resist arrest and they just allow you to walk away. He was under arrest, no matter how small or large the crime. They felt that he needed to be arrested, and he resisted that arrest. And unfortunately, in the struggle, Eric Garner lost his life. He was 350 pounds of fat with asthma, and he was died of asphyxiation from like a chokehold, which I don't believe was intentional. They were trying to take him down, but he was a large man. Anyway, my point was that Alvin Bragg tried to bring down the police in that situation. He would, of course, be known, Alvin Bragg, for bringing the lawsuit against Donald Trump and other government officials, which were definitely politically motivated, which we'll get to. Alvin Bragg became the co-director of the Racial Justice Project for the New York State Law School. And then in 2021, he runs to be district attorney of New York. And he gets that position. He becomes the first black man to be Manhattan's district attorney. He was sworn in on January 1st, 2022, for that position. After 3 days in that position, he was only the district attorney for 3 days, and he announced his office would no longer prosecute low-level offenses such as fare evasion, resisting arrest, prostitution, and many other crimes. And this resulted in a drastic reduction in the quality of life of New York City. This man himself became responsible for the quality of life in New York City dropping. I will give you a very good example. When Mayor Giuliani and Governor George Pataki took office, they made it a point to arrest low-level criminals, to ticket and incarcerate people who were committing low-level crimes, such as window washers, such as fare jumping, or any low-level crime. And what that did was clean up the streets of New York, New York. It made people feel safer to go on the streets of New York, New York, because they were no longer being harassed. There weren't people sleeping all over the streets. There weren't people pickpocketing in Times Square. There weren't people hustling all their goods and trying to put pressure on people in the city. So the low-level criminals and the low-level drug addicts and the low-level drug dealers were taken off the streets under Giuliani and Pataki. He cleaned up 42nd Street by locking up the prostitutes and the pimps, and he turned 42nd Street into a Disneyland, and people were able to shop there. He got rid of the peep shows, and Alvin Bragg has done the complete opposite. He has allowed low-level criminals to flourish in New York City, which is the reason he gets the title of Jerk-Off of the Week. He should get Jerk-Off of the Decade, but this is a weekly program, so he'll get Jerk-Off of the Week. Last week, as I said, it was Eric Adams that got Jerk-Off of the Week. That was his partner. So he's definitely responsible for the quality of life dropping inside of New York, New York. He also decided to seek lesser charges for burglaries, store robberies, even when the offender displayed a weapon. So if someone robbed a store, if someone committed a burglary, if someone broke into someone's house, even if they displayed a weapon, Alvin Bragg said, we're going to reduce the charges. This way we can let them out, ROR, released on their own recognizance, and not have to set a bail for them. Because under the bail reform law, they felt bail was unjust, that some people couldn't afford bail. Well, if they couldn't afford bail, then they shouldn't have committed the crime. Right? For the people who had money to bail themselves out, they're the ones that earn that money and they can bail themselves out. If you didn't have money, don't commit the crime. Then you don't have to worry about the bail. He decides to finally indict Donald Trump in March of 2022 for giving hush money to the porn star, whatever that whore's name was, right? I forget. I'm drawing a blank. But what's crazy is that he goes to prosecute a former president of the United States, the first time that a former president of the United States has ever been indicted, right? And he goes to prosecute him for giving money to a willing party, right, who's accepting the money. In other words, the porn star says, if you give me this money, I will keep my mouth shut. And so they make a deal between one another, and he gives her the money. And she also signed a waiver saying that she would never be able to come after Donald Trump for that. And he goes to prosecute him for that. But he won't prosecute a drug dealer. He won't prosecute someone with a gun. He won't process someone who's committing a burglary, a robbery, fare jumping. People who are detriments to the city, he won't prosecute. Right. So obviously the Trump thing was politically motivated. As we all know, he went after Trump and some of his fellow people that he worked with in the administration. He tried, like Steve Bannon, he tried to bring them all down, all politically motivated. If you remember the case with Jose Alba was the bodega guy. And he owned a bodega, and a man and a woman came into the bodega, and they got into an argument, and they took Jose Alba, who was running the bodega, and smashed his head off the counter and pushed him into the corner. And then the woman, it was a man and a woman that were doing this. The woman actually stabbed Jose Alba. And in return, Jose Alba got a butcher knife from behind the counter, stabbed the man, and the man died. Well, Alvin Bragg decides to charge Jose Alba, the bodega owner with murder and give him a $500,000 bail. Give him a $500,000 bail for self-defense, for defending himself. He doesn't charge the woman that stabbed Jose Alba. He doesn't charge her, right? He charges Jose Alba. And then later on, under political pressure, he's kind of forced to drop the charges. The mayor put some pressure on him because the media was going crazy. And even when Alvin Bragg gave a press announcement, he said the reason they were dropping the charges is because there wasn't enough evidence in the case. He didn't say anything about the charges being dropped because of self-defense reasons, which was the logical reason on why Jose Alba shouldn't have been prosecuted. You know, it was really crazy. Also, Daniel Penny. If you remember with Daniel Penny was the United States Marine who was on the subway, and he put a chokehold and killed the man who was on the train, on the subway, with 41 prior arrests. Daniel Penny was a United States Marine. This speaks for itself. He's a United States Marine who never committed a crime in his life, was never arrested in his life, was drug and alcohol free, was drug free, was never on probation. And he's on the subway, and this guy comes on the subway and says that he's willing to die. He's ready to go to jail. He's threatening the passengers. When they interviewed the passengers on the subway, the passengers were like, thank God Daniel Penny was here. Right? He was a hero. He stood up for his fellow citizens in New York who were under threat of bodily harm from a man who had 41 or 44 prior arrests. But Alvin Bragg says, I'm going to charge Daniel Penny with manslaughter, and I'm going to try and put him in prison. Right? Insane. Completely insane. Thankfully, the jury saw right through that, right? And they found Daniel Penny not guilty. Thank God. Alvin Bragg, I found out that he was married with 2 kids to Jamila, married to a woman named Jamila. Jamila, what are you doing? How are you married to this guy? Right? Maybe because he's a DA and he got a lot of money. You know what I mean? I don't know why you would be married to a waste like this, why you would be married to the jerk off of the week. But, as I said, his father was a civil rights activist. His mother was a doctor. He also released on February 18th, right, which was at the filming of this video a couple of days ago, February 18th, he released 34-year-old Edwin Rivera. Edwin Rivera just shot a New York City cop in the shoulder, right? He was a career criminal, Edwin Rivera. He was on parole 4 different times, right? And he was arrested while he was on parole for a gun charge. And Alvin Bragg lets him go 4 different times. And then he shoots an NYPD officer because he had a stolen scooter. And NYPD officers approached him in an apartment building. He went back into his apartment building and barricaded himself in, and then ends up shooting the NYPD, a 20-year veteran of the NYPD, shoots him in the shoulder. Thank God he didn't shoot him in the head, right? And this guy is on the street because of Alvin Bragg. When Alvin Bragg became the district attorney, 9 district attorneys in the Manhattan DA's office left right away. And some big district attorneys. The district attorney who prosecuted Harvey Weinstein, named Orban, a female named Orban. The district attorney who handled the Eton Pates case, named John Irwin. These people were like, we're out of here, because they knew that Alvin Bragg was coming in with a liberal agenda, right? And he made a statement that he was not going to sentence anyone to over 20 years. That 20 years was going to be the maximum sentence for any crime that came in front of him. That means if someone murdered and raped a child, the most they were facing is 20 years under Alvin Bragg. How insane is that? So 9 district attorneys left right away. And what he did in return was he brought in a bunch of school intelligent, well-graded, young district attorneys that would follow his lead and that were with this new generation of thinking. That's what he did. He got rid of the old timers and he brought in a big young crew after they left. This way, they would follow his agenda of being weak on crime, right? He's been ruled the worst DA in the United States of America. That's what he's been ruled. The worst DA, not by me, by people that follow this in the news media and look at the statistics of district attorneys throughout the country. Alvin Bragg has been voted the worst district attorney in the United States of America. He also released Raymond Rivera. If you don't remember who Raymond Rivera is the guy that about 6 months ago, 8 months ago, ran around New York City with a butcher knife, stabbing people. He killed 3 people. He murdered a construction worker, and he murdered 2 other people running around with a butcher knife. This guy was arrested 9 times in 1 year in Manhattan. One arrest was in New Jersey, so I should clarify that. But he was arrested 9 times, with those arrests taking place in Manhattan, and Alvin Bragg just kept putting them back on the street. He ended up murdering 3 people. I don't understand why there's not a lawsuit yet against Alvin Bragg, holding him responsible for those murders as an accessory to those murders, because he released that man to the street knowing very well he was a danger to society. Alvin Bragg is pro-criminal and anti-victim. That's what he is. He's a pro-criminal, anti-victim district attorney. And if we were to look up the cases of the people that he has released that went on to rape children, the immigrants, illegal immigrants, not immigrants, illegal immigrants that he has released that went on to rape people. Remember the case in Central Park? Was it Central Park where the 12-year-old boy was raped by the illegal immigrant that Alvin Bragg, I believe, let out of prison? Let me say allegedly, because I'm not positive of that one, but I believe that's the case. Alvin Bragg has released so many people that have gone on to rape and kill people in society, New York residents, that how can these people support him in any way whatsoever? How can they side with him in any way whatsoever? He definitely deserves the title of my jerk off of the week, right? As I said last week, it was Eric Adams. This week, it's Alvin Bragg. Next week, I'm debating whether it's going to be Kathy Hochul or I'll pick someone else from you. You know what I mean? But New York is never going to recover with these liberal people who are causing tremendous amounts of harm to this state. As a former prisoner myself, I served 17 years in prison, right? But I don't blame anyone for being in prison. I don't blame my lawyer. I don't blame my judge. I don't blame the district attorney. I don't blame the officer who arrested me. I blame myself. I took personal responsibility for the crime I committed. I'm extremely embarrassed about it. It was 27 years ago. I'm an extremely different individual than the ignorant kid I was back then, right? But now I look at the system for what it is, and I see that they are enabling people to commit more crimes, right? And this I don't comprehend. As a former prisoner and as a pretty tough guy, it's a shame to say that I am scared to go into New York City, that I will not take my family into New York City, because I fear that somebody is going to try and do something, or I'm going to be forced to protect my family, and then someone like Alvin Bragg is going to make me the bad guy. Actually, he might just let me go, right? But the truth is, because of my criminal record, he might let me go. But the truth is, he would let the attacker go. Alvin Bragg, you are jerk off of the week.